Hey folks, it's Rob Flux here with another Sunday session, and today we're going to be talking all about development research tools and how you can get to finding the good deals fast and how to get rid of the fast ones as quick as humanly possible. We all know that I talk about my 10-minute checks, and one of the tools that I use in order to do that is a tool called Archistar. So with that said, why don't we welcome Matthew Young from Archistar and I guess find all about your tool and how we can actually use that, I guess, to fast track our deals, mate. So welcome aboard.
Yes. Hey, thank you so much for having me on the chat today.
Very good, mate. So firstly, who is Matthew and who is Archistar? A lot of people may or may not have heard of yourselves. Just give us a little bit of an insight without doing the pitch kind of thing.
Sure.
But what is Archistar?
Yeah. So I mean, Archistar, we've been around. So I think early 20-teens. Kind of morphed over the course of a few years from our original product, which was a sort of a learning tool in terms of how to learn design software functionality. Over the years, we've sort of morphed into a more sort of developer-focused product in terms of, I mean, basically the elevator pitch is to help people find and assess the development potential of land, essentially is the Archistar platform. We're kind of, as a company, sort of pivoting as we sort of move and sort of mature into alternative products. But generally, we're all focused on helping people with development sort of outcomes and requirements for their sites. So for me personally, I've been doing sort of this type of role for 30 years. And so, you know, sort of lots of over the sort of telephone, customer support, technical training, sort of account management aspect. So I'm the sort of senior trainer for the Archistar property platform here.
Yeah, very good.
So
look, my involvement with Archistar goes way back to the start, but when you guys were actually in beta. I remember conversations
yes.
with David Hunt way back in the day.
Yes.
Our community was probably only about 2,000 people strong at that point in time. We're now 34,000. We're now national. And I was privileged to be able to give some early feedback with regards to where the platform was at that point in time. And it's come leaps and bounds from there, and is very much a staple part of a tool that we use ourselves, but also, I guess, a tool that we actually give our students so they can actually start to do their deal assessments.
I certainly remember talking to you in the earliest stages of my employment within the company, and it's true to say a lot of the feedback that you're providing is obviously on point. You obviously have a significant amount of experience, and obviously there's a large amount of people that are sort of talking to you all the time. So we greatly appreciate the feedback and sort of suggestions in terms of improvements for anything that we do. So
that's okay, mate.
Yeah, thanks.
What is enjoyable is being able to provide feedback and actually have it implemented and see the change actually occur. So that's
we try.
So good to hear. Now that said, mate, let's actually talk about. So Archistar is a development research tool, but there are also out there sales research tools. So there's things like RP data, price finder, those sorts of things. A lot of people get too confused as to because they've got a lot of functionality that does overlap a little bit. So I would say sales research tools kind of have some development capabilities, and the development research tools have some sales capabilities. But what's the core difference? What's the primary difference between them?
So I think the key differences are the speciality of those products. All right. So, I mean, you talk about things like Price Finder and RP Data, for instance. So those tools are specialist in terms of what they do. So they have deep sort of analysis tools related to sales activity within, say, a particular site or a suburb, for instance. There's all sorts of detailed reports and analytics that you can get on high levels of sales analysis for a particular area. Our tool is different from that. I mean, we do definitely incorporate components of that information from those sites, but we also have a heavy slant towards more development-related sort of functionality and data. So we have a lot of heavy insight in terms of things like zoning information, for instance, and detailed analytics related to planning rules, for example. We have all sorts of algorithms that run throughout the program that help people look at a particular property and understand what you can build on that site in relation to things like the zoning and the the planning rules and the permitted land uses. So we're different from them because we have different functionality that is more targeted towards development, so to speak, rather than the sort of the highly specialized sales tools that you would get from those features.
Yeah, and your integrations are into zoning layers and overlays and I guess the legislative and planning layers and all those sorts of elements, whereas their plugins are into I guess the titles office, so and the sales history and the like. And so whilst you might get one or two data sets that cross over, predominantly you need an actual dedicated sales research tool, and you need a dedicated development research tool. And I can't stress that enough. I guess using I guess a platform that is fit for purpose, the right tool for the right job, so to speak.
I think that's right. I mean, ultimately, what we're trying to do basically is, I mean, we have information from a variety of third-party partners. So companies such as Cotality, for instance, and their RP data product, domain and price finder, companies such as Nearmap and their high resolution imagery. We collect a whole range of sort of data and sort of information from a variety of different sources and combine them all in one place within the Archistar platform. But we're not RP data. We don't have the detailed sort of functionality that you might get from there. So, I mean, we think that the average mum and dad investor, let's say, the information that's available in the Archistar platform is pretty majorly sufficient, I should say, for the needs for some of the smaller end of I'll try not to undersell the company too much, but yeah, so so we're absolutely perfect for the vast majority of people that sort of need to sort of look at, find and assess sites. But occasionally you'll probably find, sometimes you might need some of the higher level capability, at which point you might need to sort of talk to RP data, for instance, and price find those types of things.
And it's also fair to say that you've got multiple tiers of platform available, so that I guess as you progress from being a novice developer all the way through to professional developer, you can add more and more layers of data into that and make your life a little bit easier through the process, but still be cost conscious in the early days when you're I guess trying to still get the runs on the board for the first deal across the line.
I mean, we've sort of I'd like to say that we've matured in terms of the way that we interact with the market nowadays. I mean, historically, we really only used to deal with sort of locked in sort of fixed term contracts, for instance. So there was sometimes a bit of an obstacle to people buying a subscription to the platform because of that. But over the years, we've realized that can be obstructive to people. And so we've kind of introduced a month-to-month model, for example, so that people can sort of sign up and then sort of check out after a month if they need to. But yeah, I mean, the different tiers that we have. So the different tiers obviously sort of allow different access, as you quite rightly say. But the implication being that, if you're on a budget, you can sign up for the lower package, absolutely, and sort of check out functionality. If you need to, you can upgrade to a higher package and then sort of downgrade again. So we try and sort of provide flexibility to our users to be able to upgrade and downgrade and access functionality as they see fit, really.
Yeah, so anyone who's checked out your platform in the past, I guess when you did have those annual subscriptions only and may have been put off by that, know that I guess it might be appropriate to come back and reassess the platform now if that's one of those obstacles that stop you actually moving forward. But I guess another, I guess, obvious question. I guess novice developers may not yet have had their first deal. I guess they're a little bit cost conscious and that sort of thing along the way. A lot of the time, they're tempted to do some free resources to actually do their things. What would be, I guess, the argument as to why a paid tool like yourselves would be appropriate?
Yeah, excellent question. I mean, I think there's probably a couple of factors really that that would be good to take into consideration. I mean, obviously, because of the fact that we make information available so easily within the platform. So, for example, you know, if you're looking at a particular property, so we have site finding functionality that allows you to, you know, go to a suburb and find sites, right? So you go to a particular suburb and you sort of find sort of 3 or 4 sites that you think might be appropriate for your needs. You can delve down into that particular site. There's an awful lot of deep dive that we go into in relation to that property. We dig down into the zoning information. We dig down into the permitted land use types for that particular site. So we clearly try to identify for you, you're looking at this low density residential site, well, you could put dual occupancy on there, or you can put secondary dwellings on there. So we try to clearly outline for you what you can do there. But then we also delve down into the detailed planning rules that are associated with that as well. So you know, we'll show you what the setback is, for instance, what the you know, the maximum building height might be, site coverage requirements, all sorts of things like that. So for people that aren't experienced necessarily in that type of thing, there's an awful lot of information presented essentially on a plate, right? So there's a lot of learning that can be gathered from that aspect. You know, so yeah, you can go off to these free sources. Absolutely, you can do that. I suppose one of the other things as well is because the platform has all of this information in one place, we have a collection of all of these different data sets. The implication being that you can collect it all in one go. You know, you can overlay a variety of different data sources and things all on one site. So I think that the key thing, I'll probably summarize. The key thing really is the learning that you would be able to gather from that. You know, so you click on a site, go in and look at the information and understand quite easily, oh yeah, this particular site, I can do this, I can do that, I'm facing this type of offset requirements, these maximum building heights. You may not necessarily be able to gather that quite so easily if you didn't have that information presented to hand.
Yeah, look, and all very useful. For me personally, the fact that you've collated data from multiple data sets means instead of me looking on 3 screens to try and cross-reference things, I can actually filter in the one platform against those all those data sets at the same time, right? So, which means that I can find the number of opportunities in a suburb in literally a minute. And I can go, well, this suburb here, suburb A, has only got 20 opportunities, and this suburb over here might have 250 opportunities. So clearly, I'm going to start farming where there's 250 opportunities because there's more likelihood of me actually getting a deal over there, right?
Yeah.
So it's the convenience factor, the hassle factor, the time factor. Because as you know, time is money.
Time is money.
If I can get the same information in a fraction of a minute, as opposed to, hey, I have to look at every single property in that particular suburb. And yes, I could do it for free, but it's the old penny wise and pound poor. I would suggest have a look at your hourly rate in your day job. Apply that to your development research timeline and go, well, if I'm spending an hour on something, that's probably very close to paying my monthly subscription.
I mean, it's there are so many points that you raise in there that are just so true, really. I mean, obviously, I mean, you talk about the toll gating concept. You know, obviously in your courses and things, you talk about the whole point of, well, you know, you may have a collection of properties that you're interested in looking at, but as you know, as you're sort of starting to delve down and sort of dive into those particular properties, you're going to start to find that there are aspects of them that make them not suitable. You know, there may be hidden overlays that you don't know about, for instance, that you wouldn't necessarily be able to find unless you had experience in that field and knew where to look. And so as you're prospecting for properties, you'll find you might start with a collection of them, and as you're sort of, you know, you're if I'm going to use the toll gating concept, then in that case, you know, you're driving down the road with your particular site and you're hitting various checkpoints as you go, and you identify, oh, well, there's a particular issue with that particular site. Oh, well, I'll check off the road. I'm through that toll gate and I'm out of the picture then. So it's kind of like a filtering process. So the Archistar platform, to get back on track in terms of where I'm trying to go here. So the Archistar platform, it has a significant collection of data sets, features, and functions. And obviously, they're very, very helpful for you then in terms of being able to streamline and identify the key sites from your searching. And yeah, because it's all there in one place, it means that you don't necessarily have to go to multiple data sources to collect that information together, you know.
Absolutely. And we touched on a little bit earlier. You said, you know, that we'd provided some valuable feedback, and I also said you guys had implemented some things along the way. One of those features you just touched on, which was, I guess, that toll gating and filtering side of things. You can then add that filter into a list of properties. Hey, I've qualified this property or I've disqualified this property. Add it into the appropriate list, so you're not analyzing it twice. And when you start to see it come on market and that sort of thing, you can actually go, well, I've actually done my my checks on that particular one. For me personally, I like front loading a lot of my assessment. So when I'm doing a suburb, we teach a thing called suburb analysis, and we do a 10-minute check. So if there's 250 opportunities, I'll spend somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes on each one of those, and I will filter that down further, I guess qualify them or disqualify them to say, well, is it developable? Now, the old is it profitable part is the next toll gate.
Yes.
But in 5 to 10 minutes, I can cull that 250 down to maybe 170, 180 that are now my hot targets, right? They're the ones that I want to start to, I guess, do door knocking and letterbox drops and talk to agents about and those sorts of things.
That's right.
And the others, when I see them come to market, I can safely just kind of push them aside and say, oh, I've already done that check. I don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, there's a developer client that I was talking to that essentially was talking about Sydney and the lower North Shore of Sydney. And so we have a filter, you're quite right, we have a filter capability in the system that allows you to kind of define the types of, you know, what does a perfect site look like for you, for instance. You know, if you have a particular site in mind, I kind of consider that as a bit of a recipe, so to speak, in terms of the different components of what an ideal site looks like. So there's a filter capability that allows you to define the recipe of what it is that you're looking for within a suburb, and the system will show you there's 300 of them. It then allows you to wash those sites across a range of risk factors: flooding, bushfire, heritage, you know, sort of slope. There's all sorts of criteria that you can apply. And obviously, as you're applying these risk factors, you're whittling the quantity down to a smaller set. And the implication being that at the end of that process, we do have a capability that allows you to bulk pick and select those items to then dump them in a list so that you can come back to those items and track and manage them at a later time. We had a guy who basically said that he was able to search the entire of lower North Shore Sydney in a morning, and he came out with, you know, as I sometimes talk about panning for gold as well in terms of the properties within an area. He came out with 10 nuggets that were absolutely perfect for his needs. Would have taken him weeks to be able to search all of that information typically.
Yeah.
So there's some significant time saving and efficiency that you can gather from the functionality in the platform.
There's also additional capabilities that your platform has that you can't get from any of those resources at all. So, for example, you've got a thing called generative design. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about what is generative design? Because it sounds like a fancy word, but it's a fantastic tool to actually work out the yield of a site.
Try parametric generative design.
Yeah, well, I knew that.
Precise,
I just didn't want to say that.
So, I mean, this is all kind of, this has all sort of come from our co-founder, Ben Corey, Dr. Ben, as he's referred to in the industry. So, I mean, generative design was sort of, Dr. Ben's history, basically. So before he kicked Archistar off, so him and his brother Rob were the co-founders of Archistar back in the day. So I mean, he's like a multi-PhD holder in architecture and generative design and all sorts of sort of parametric design. So the concept of parametric design is to is the ability to take a range of different factors that traditionally would be difficult to incorporate together. Incorporate those things to generate some form of an outcome, a 3D design building, for instance. And so by parametric, we mean things like the planning rules, the environmental concept in terms of things like sunlight analysis, for instance, those types of things. So the generative design program, parametric generative design program, basically lets you take a site, and maybe you've looked at the planning rules and you've worked out that you could get a 5-story apartment building on there, for instance, or conceivably you get 4 townhouses or something like that on there. But what does that actually look like, and what does it work out like from a feasibility point of view, for instance? All right, so you can go into the Archistar platform, pick a particular site, access the generative design tool. You can see within the platform the variety of planning rules that define what you can do on that site in terms of things like setbacks, maximum building heights, all that type of stuff. And you can then go and generate concept suggestions in terms of what you could do on that. It's really intended, it is concept. We're not trying to replicate architectural
you're not saying where's the
quality
kitchen,
designs.
where's the bathroom. You're not doing that.
No.
What you're doing is footprint. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
but you're doing thousands of footprints in literally minutes.
Yeah,
and so, I find that extraordinarily handy, because if I had hypothetically, if I had the same size block of land and the same zoning block of land and the same overlays block of land, but the dimensions were different, then the design I get out of that is going to be a completely different design. And if it's a long, skinny block, I might not be able to get things like turning circles and car parking and things like that. But if it's a short, fat block, I might be able to do those things.
That's
so right. The parametric design tells me, literally within a couple of minutes, the thousands of different permutations, what the yield out of that site will be. So, because I can do a mathematical thing on the back of an envelope and go, well, I think I can get 10.
Yeah.
But this will go, actually, you can actually get 12 out of this one.
Yeah, absolutely right. And from a time saving and efficiency point of view, I mean, so if you consider the fact, so let's imagine you're not too sure exactly what you could do with a particular site, right? So you don't have much experience, for instance, and so you're thinking, well, what can I build? What sort of yield can I get on there? You may not. One of the first things you might do, you might go talk to a town planner, for instance. Town planner is going to come back to you and sort of suggest, from our research, you get 4 townhouses on there, for instance. We've determined you can do that. And there's a certain amount of time that would take to get that. There's a certain amount of cost implication as well. Town planner will charge you a certain amount of money to do that. And then he's going to come back with a suggestion, for townhousing, and think, okay, fair enough. What else could I do? What would it look like if I was to do duplex on there, for instance? Or, oh, it's a medium density zone site. What would apartment building look like on there? You've got to go back to the town planner. So there's a certain amount of backwards and forwards associated with that. There's a cost implication to that, and a time
implication, and speed is the most important part. So
Yes.
the yield analysis side of things, to be able to I guess take a deal off the market super fast.
Yep.
Knowing that you can actually get the yield, and then knowing what the yield is, then do a feasibility to go, well, I know what these are going to sell for. The fact that you can do that in super quick, I guess in our PDF program, we call that the 2-hour check. So the 2-hour check, we're trying to actually, so 10 minutes is it developable? The 2-hour check is it profitable? What we're trying to do is to go, what are all the issues and challenges on this site? What's the yield actually going to be? What can we actually sell it for? And are we within an order of magnitude profitable on this? So it helps us to very quickly get to that point and go, I can get the yield I thought I could get, or I can squeeze one more, or hey, this site I can't get what I'm after.
And that's so probably the key thing, isn't it? Actually, it doesn't work. Move on to the next one. So I guess it's the toll gate scenario again, isn't it? Really, oh, it doesn't work, move on. So and look, obviously, totally agree. I mean, obviously, the implication being that if potentially you can do multiple types of developments on there, duplexes, townhouses, or apartments, the system allows you to rapidly check all of those options. Okay, our duplex doesn't work. I get 4 townhouses on there. Actually, that's not too bad. That's possible. I couldn't do a 5-story apartment building on here because it's too tall. It's going to be casting shadows over the neighbor's property, for instance. So I can't do that. Looks like townhouse is the way to go then, and generate a feasibility against it from that point. So
So speed and efficiency, that's the key, and that's why monthly subscriptions are worthwhile, folks, is being able to do all of that and some. And the last one I'd say is probably the ability to de-risk the site, and that is maybe there's a piece of data that you didn't know existed, and whilst you're trying to hunt around trying to find these free tools, you've missed that, right? So some critical piece of information, being soil contamination or something that maybe you didn't check that contamination register or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I'm aware of the fact that your history in terms of development, you obviously are a successful developer, but I'm sure that you would have found over time that even successful developers, sometimes there's going to be something that is missed for some reason. Someone failed to spot that there was a key overlay, or there was an issue with some form of easement in that particular area that hadn't been identified, for example. Because of the fact that we put that research in. I'm not sure of the last count in terms of the variety of risk layers that there is in the program, but we must be in the high 20s, early 30s now in terms of the different layers that we've got, all from a variety of different sources targeting different things. We've got there's a detailed analysis for every single property in terms of what we call risks and overlays. Yeah, I mean, risk mitigation. So, the implication of finding out in the early stages of site acquisition that there's a problem with that site is such a valuable thing, because if you don't spot that, and at a later time, you've submitted a development application and some highly talented town planner comes back and says, actually, you can't do that because there's an easement there. Well, that's a massive problem and a significant cost implication for you as well. So we obviously tried to sort of ensure that you don't experience those issues. find out what sites are a problem, get rid of them right in the early stages. Don't even look at those sites. Move on to the next one. Fail fast to a certain degree in terms of those sites as well.
Not only fail fast, but fail safely, mate. That's what's way more important. You don't lose money by the deal you don't get into. So that's you only lose money by getting into the dud deal, and that's the point of today, mate. It's
yes, the dud deal.
The dud deals, we want to avoid those. Look, the other thing that I would say is the deep level integration that you've got with regards to the planning rules. When you're trying to use a free resource, you see the planning rules, but the planning rules are quite often 300 pages thick, right?
Yeah.
And trying to find the individual nuance of what we're trying to do on our particular site. And then you go from one council to the next council, and that nuance between the first council and the second council is different. You kind of need to know everything everywhere. Whereas you guys have actually gone deep into all of that and actually built that into the platform. And your analysis says, well, actually on this particular site, we believe that you can get duplexes and townhouses. Or on the next site, I think you can only get a duplex, so you can't get the townhouse. So you've actually gone that deep into the planning systems. And not only that, but when they click on the link, it takes you straight to that section of that planning legislation. So from a speed and efficiency and a learning side of things, you're not trying to trawl through the 300 pages yourself, but you go straight to the source.
It's a demystifying thing. For me, it's a case of, I mean, so, okay, I'm located in Sydney, fair enough, and I might have a bit of an understanding in terms of, I mean, I'm not a town planner by trade, so, I don't have that development history, but it's very, very straightforward to sort of pretty much go anywhere in the country, actually, sort of click on a particular property, and because we know the zoning and we've delved down into that level of depth, we've done that work for you. It's very, very easy to be able to see, oh yeah, okay, it's zoned this particular way. Well, what can I put on it? We even go down to the level of, well, yeah, okay, well, in theory, zoning says that you could get multiple dwellings on there, or generic term townhouses, for instance. But in practice, actually, there's an issue with your site. It's too small or it's too narrow, for instance. There are planning constraints that stop you from doing that. So we even go down to the level of, well, actually, whilst it might be zoned for that, in reality, you can't do it because of this. And then when you do delve down into the planning rules, you're absolutely right. We even go down to the level of differentiation between build type. So on a medium density site, for instance, you get sort of multiple dwellings, dual occupancy, secondary dwellings, apartment buildings possibly. And potentially each of those build types might have different planning rules that affect them, different setbacks, for instance. And we actually differentiate those so that if you were looking to do residential flat buildings or apartment buildings, you can actually go in and filter the rules, and it will show you, oh, okay, residential flat buildings or apartment buildings, the appropriate rules are these. And then we will sort of give you a link directly to that particular planning document. We'll even go down to the specific paragraph and even table in that case, in terms of where we've taken the data, because it's such a pain if you're not an expert in terms of your planning rules. It's such a pain to have to go trawl through, I don't know how many hundreds of pages worth per document. So we kind of hand it to you on a plate, basically, to try and sort of help you from that point of view. But again, that's all down to the, as I say demystification, but it's also the learning aspect as well. So that helps you to understand what you can and can't do in those particular areas quickly.
Yeah. So I guess summarizing all of that, it's the speed and efficiency of actually getting to the outcome that you're actually looking for. The ability to use a toll gating type approach to say, well, what's the smallest amount of effort that I can actually put into this to actually rule out the site? And if I can do that, I can look at more sites in less time. Okay, and then if it passes tollgate number 1, then you put more effort into tollgate number 2, and then take it to the next stage.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, very good, mate. So let's do a features type conversation to go. What are some of the things in the platform that, other than just the I guess the zoning and the overlays and that sort of thing, what are some of the features that we can get in there?
In terms of the features that are in there at the moment.
Well, so we've talked about the fact that you've got the generative design, for example. We've talked about the fact that you've got the filtering and the lists to actually be able to say, well, I've qualified or disqualified this particular site. What are some of the other, I guess, high-level features that are available that may be at different price points, but when people start to go, hey, I see the value, they can understand what to do?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I'm certainly in terms of, so I guess if we talk about individual site analysis, for instance, so a lot of the work that we've developed over time has been sort of working on algorithms, basically, that analyze sites. So we have what we call a precedence feature, for instance, which is, I mean, that was kind of a bit subjective, really, but basically what that does is it looks at the surrounding area. So common question we're asked when we talk to people is, okay, I'm looking at this particular site, what can I do on that site? Well, very often the answer to that question can be, well, what do other people do on their sites, or what have other people done on their sites? So our precedence information is analyzing the surrounding areas, looking at sites that have been developed previously and what's been done on there, and then presenting that as a suggestion. Well, this particular property's got, say, 3 townhouses on there. This other property's got 3 townhouses. That one's got 4. That one's only got 2. So it's kind of giving you a sort of the surrounding precedents that have been done in that area to help you make that determination. So there's obviously that particular feature. Obviously, in terms of the generative design tool, I kind of mentioned, or you've kind of mentioned the sort of detailed feasibility function that's available within there as well. That helps you be able to go down and sort of do a detailed analysis in terms of the financial viability. I think one of the key advantages of the fact that we have such a range of data coming from a variety of different sources. So, for instance, well, I've kind of mentioned that we've got data from Cotality, for instance, CoreLogic as they used to be called. So Cotality and Domain. So because we have that data in one place, we're able to, when you look at a feasibility, for instance, be able to determine, yes, if I was to do 4 townhouses on there, CoreLogic's telling me that a townhouse sells in this area for $950,000, for instance. Well, okay, then I can use that in the feasibility. We've also got costings information that comes from one of our third-party partners, Cordell. So again, there's a range of data that's sort of coming in there.
But you've also got things like your near map aerial imagery, for example. So a lot of people are familiar with, I guess, the Google satellite images, but near map is a much higher resolution and a much higher frequency of those photos being taken. So you can actually look at things 12 months ago and see what's changed. So you can say what development has actually happened in the area. You can research your competitors and go, well, how long did it take them to do their build? So I can see when they broke ground. I can see when they did their footings. I can see when the frame was up, and you can kind of map that out and reverse engineer other people's deals.
I think I probably sort of need to be, so one thing for me, I obviously want to try and be as transparent as I possibly can be. It's really important that I don't mislead anybody here. In terms of the near map functionality, so you're absolutely right. So high resolution aerial imagery from near map, definitely very important to be able to look at what's there at the moment. But one of the things in terms of, so we got a range of data together, near map being one of them. We don't actually have access to the historic imagery, for instance. So at the moment, you can see what's there now. And it's their most recent information, actually. But so if you were to have a subscription to Nearmap, for instance, there's sort of functionality within that subscription that allows you to check historic data, which is a very, very important piece of information. And unfortunately, we don't have that capability in the Archistar platform. I suppose one of the problems with that is if we did it, it would kind of stop people wanting to go to Nearmap to get subscriptions from there. So
it keeps it more cost affordable to actually have that high resolution imagery.
Exactly. So I mean, even for things like with Cotality's data in Archistar and domains data and Cordell's data, the information that we have in the platform is very good. It's certainly sufficient for the vast majority of circumstances where you might want to be able to do some form of analytics in terms of sale prices or in terms of Cordell's DA data, what's going off in the area around you. But there is certain high level detailed functionality that you get in their products that we don't have in the Archistar platform. We've got their data, but we don't necessarily have the detail level functionality that they do.
Yeah, because they need to, I guess, still encourage you to actually subscribe to their platform as well.
They do.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
right.
so that was my bad going deep into that side of things. So sorry to.
No, not at all. Again, look, I mean, obviously, I suppose one thing that I would say is I strive very hard to not mislead people in terms of the capability, because I do the product training as well. And the sort of the account management sort of aspect. There's nothing worse than someone coming back going, well, you said that you could do this, and you can't. So I obviously strive very hard to be as accurate there. But I mean, in terms of data layers, you know, we're always adding in new functionality as we go. We recently added in sort of noise pollution layers that come from roads and rail and air, for instance. In New South Wales, we've captured a layer related to noise pollution from airports, for example. All through feedback from clients that are going, oh, well, you know, why haven't you got this information? I can see if I click on this link here on the internet, it takes me to that particular data layer. Why haven't you got it? And so, you know, we're always adding in new stuff basically as time goes by. So
absolutely. Well, one of the features that I really love on your platform, everyone, all the platforms out there have contours, right?
Yeah.
But what I love is the fact that you have actually turned that into a 3D image of the site. So rather than just trying to work out lines on a page which are flat two-dimensional and you're trying to work out how bad the slope is, you guys have three-dimensionalized that so you can actually look at it and go, oh, wow, that's pretty bad. Or actually I can work with that and I can see where it's sloping, what corner it's sloping to, whether or not I can get my services in and out, those sorts of things. So that visual aspect of that is, I guess, the best, or not the best, but one of the things that I love using the most.
It's so I mean, we one of our sort of client types. So we work with home builders, for instance, as well. And the consideration there is that if there's a home builder that has kind of off topic in terms of potentially the sort of some of the clients that we're talking to on this podcast, but you know, as a home builder client, you want to be able to test your model in terms of how it works on a particular site, right? So there's a capability of the home builders add-on where you can upload your models into the system and test them how they fit on the site. But one of the problems is, well, how does that site fit in terms of the contours, the 3D? So we have what's called
site mapping is what you're basically saying. How do I put my house design on that particular site?
That's right. And the implication for that is in terms of cut and fill, right? So we've got like so that home builder tool. So where this 3D feature that you're talking about stemmed from technology that we introduced for the home builder client in terms of the cut and fill calculator. You know, if I was to site a particular home in this instance, where do I need to take soil and where do I need to dump it to get a flat piece of land, basically, to build my
Yep.
house on. So
And
that
how
3D,
big are the retaining walls and all sorts of things like that that
ex
come as a byproduct of all of that.
exactly right. So that 3D topography sort of thing came from that, and it's absolutely fantastic. You know, it's very, very useful to be able to look at a site and go, because I mean, we do have contours at 1 meter increments, so you can, you know, if you can read contour layers, that's fantastic. Some people don't quite sort of get the concept of contours. Seeing it in 3D is very, very clear in terms of, well, there's a cliff face running through the center of that particular site. I don't think I'm going to touch that with a barge pole then, or it's flat. It's a very, so it's flat as. That's exactly the type of site I'm looking for. You know, it's the visualization aspect is significant.
Look, I'm never afraid of slope, but it has to have a purpose.
Well, you build that into your decision making, don't you?
Correct. So if I have a slope that's overlooking Sydney Harbour, then it's probably worth the expense of doing, I guess, all the earthworks that we're actually talking about, and the retaining and that sort of thing. But if it's overlooking an industrial precinct, it's probably not. So slope by itself is not a problem. It's the perspective that's got with regards to everything else in the context that actually sits within that actually makes that problematic or not cost effective.
It's knowing, isn't it? It's knowing that there's a slope there, and understanding the concept of that slope. If you don't know, you can't deal with it. So.
Absolutely. Now, I want to talk about a feature that, because you just touched on, I guess, one of your other products, which is not the core platform. I want to talk about another product, which is not the core platform, that is just giving people the insights into the deep level of integration that you guys have got. So you've got a product called e-check, which you I guess sell globally, and you, I guess, try to sell that into the local councils to actually do site assessments to go, well, if a developer is actually lodging a DA, it'll actually assess their plans and check the rules and go, is it compliant against that particular set of rules? So give us some insights into that, because this is something that I want our developers to be starting to pressure the local councils to say, why aren't you using that?
Yes.
Because if we know that tools like that exist, the ability for us to know that we can actually get our deals assessed so much faster, holding costs of what actually hurt. And if the council can actually assess the deal quicker, that's the key.
So essentially, eCheck has evolved over time from our, as you say, we have a deep understanding of planning rules and concepts, but strangely, it's actually kicked off first internationally, so Canada and the US. So we're really proud of the fact that we had all of those fires in Los Angeles and California, the Palisades fires a couple of years ago, devastating.
I don't think you're proud of the fire.
But no, not proud of the fire. Proud of, yes, quite. Thank you. Yeah, we're pretty. We didn't have anything to do with the fire, just to be clear. We didn't sort of,
didn't start that
to kick off our product in those areas. But so yeah, what the e-check system is basically is it's a pre-development application checklist, right? So the concept is that as an applicant, you have a development application that you want to submit to council. So this is a global thing, right? The issues that you face submitting your development application to council to get it assessed is something that happens everywhere on the planet. It's not an Australian thing. So the implication is you submit your development application, it sits in some town planners inbox for a while. Town planner's busy, obviously, so it doesn't get to your plans. When he does get to your plans, he sort of gets them out, he puts them on his desk, he sort of, bit old school, so it's not quite like this now, but he gets out his ruler and starts measuring key measurements off your plans, and he finds out that you haven't put a key piece of information such as the floor height in there or something. So it gets sent back to you as the applicant, and you have to go fix it, submit it back again, and that cycle continues, right? So there's a massive time delay in terms of that development application going through. So what the e-check system is is instead of you submitting it to the council, you submit it to Archistar. And what we do, because of our knowledge of the planning rules and things, is we go through that plan and we assess it for compliance. We've got a checklist of 60, 70, 80 different items that we check, even down to situations such as the location of a smoke alarm, for instance. We were looking at a particular sort of development application we looked at a few days ago that failed the initial check because the smoke alarm was placed too close to the door for the bathroom. So when you open the door, all the steam comes out, sets the fire alarm, sets the smoke alarm off. So we'll go through your plans, we'll spit out a report, basically sort of a green ticked or red cross report in terms of the items that fail. We'll send that back to you. And as the applicant, you can then fix those items and then submit it back to us. It's like a cycle. And basically, you'll end up with a green ticked report. The concept then is you then take that report, submit it to the council, and so we'd have checked off, say, 80 to 90% of the things that the council would typically be looking at. There's always going to be some subjective stuff that the town planner wants to look at in that particular case. But because we've dealt with a lot of the early back and forth and those types of things, the application will take days, if not weeks, to go through, as opposed to months. You know, I mean, from a cost saving point of view, you know, what sort of costs do you face when you're trying to get a development application going through and it's just sort of sitting there? You're facing all sorts of holding costs on a continuous basis. So because it rapidly speeds up the sort of process, it's obviously saving significant time, both for you and the council as well. Of course, it's a massive sort of time saving. I think we've approved something like, I don't know, 500 or 600 development applications in LA and LA County after those fires. That was what we were proud of, not the fires.
So getting the rebuild underway faster was what you were proud of.
Exactly, and obviously so you know, bringing this to sort of Australia, you know, we're obviously sort of trying to sort of get that kicked off here as soon as we possibly can. There's obviously you know, work in progress to get that achieved.
Absolutely, because every state government's different, every local government's different. There's a lot of work to actually get done. But I wanted to talk about that platform and get our developers to be talking to our local councils and our town planners and say, why aren't you guys actually doing this in a
that would be fantastic,
smart way? Equally, that platform, I want to be super clear, guys, this platform is actually not intended for us as a developer. It's actually intended for the council themselves. But having the council having that, but we did have a little bit of a chat off air and feature request, Matthew. It would actually be really good if we could do a one-off report and attach that to the council application, and then council can actually see, hey, we've actually put some effort into this, and that might encourage the councils to actually take it on board as well.
I shall take that feature request on board, Rob. Thank you so much.
That's okay, mate.
Absolutely.
We're always here to help.
Yeah, totally. You know, this type of stuff is gold, really, in terms of how we can continuously work to improve the thing, to make it more beneficial for people.
Absolutely, mate. Been an amazing chat. I'm just wrapping it all up. If you talk to any real estate agent on earth, they're going to tell you the zoning says that you can do, you know, a 15-story high-rise apartment complex or some bizarre thing, but the zoning is only the maximum potential of a site. The constraints that sit on that site will tell you whether or not that potential can ever be reached. And tools like Archistar as a development research tool are going to tell you whether that development, that potential can actually get there. Or can you squeeze the lemon a little bit harder and maybe get one more on? That's how you actually sift through sites really fast, using those little tollgate methods and that sort of thing to achieve a faster outcome. Look at more sites in less time.
Yeah, look, just as a sort of final thing, that's absolutely right. I mean, obviously, one of the implications of the way that we help you to visualize the data is, oh shit, you know, you might have excuse the language. You might have imposed a gross floor area cap on the site of 2 to 1, for instance, but in reality, there's just no way you can achieve that in that particular area. It just doesn't work. It's not practical. So having the ability to visualize that is a key thing. And obviously we sort of work to try to reflect this information as much as possible.
Very good, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure, Matthew. Good to catch up with you again.
Thank you.
And looking forward to, a much longer association with yourself and Archistar in particular.
Awesome.
Folks, for those of you who are new to our podcast platform here, we also run physical meetup events all the way around the country. We get industry experts like Matthew and others, town planners, civil engineers and architects and the like, to actually come and present. We also get members of our community sharing real deals. So you get to see the good, the bad and the ugly of a project. We currently run them in 4 states, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne and Adelaide, but I'm proud to say that in the new year, Perth will be launching. We have, breached a threshold there. That means that I'm hoping to announce some actual go live dates for Perth in the not too distant future. So if you are in Perth and you are, wanting to come along to one of these shows, then know that that's on their way. Matthew, once again, mate, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
And we'll see you hopefully at one of our next upcoming meetups. Till
Thanks,
then,
Rob. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.